All right, good day. My name is Fadi Manawi. I'm a U.S. attorney with Visa Place Legal. I'm also the managing director here. Today, we are talking about business plans. So I am pleased to have with me Marianella Mansour of Journey Business Plans. She is the partner and director of sales and marketing. We have been referring many of our clients to Journey Business Plans for many years now. And we are very happy with the work that they provide. So I thought it might be a good subject matter to speak about today, because the business plan does play a pivotal role with many of the U.S. Visa applications. So welcome, Marianella.
Thank you, Fadi, for having us. It's a pleasure to be here. As you said, I'm the Director of Sales and Marketing here at Journey Business Plan. I'm an immigrant myself, originally from Colombia, and very proud to be here as representing Journey. I wanted to talk a little bit about Journey. At Journey Business Plans, we specialize preparing business plans for immigration towards the US, Canada, and also recently Australia. The US is one of our biggest markets, and we're glad to be here because Visa Place is one of our main partners, and we have been working with Visa Place for many years now. And Fadi, I believe we've done almost like 300 projects already, at least.
Right.
So really happy to be here. Thank you.
And welcome again. When I'm actually consulting with clients, we get many questions with respect to the business plan right off the bat. So, some of those questions we've sort of accumulated, and I thought it would be a good idea to go through some of those questions initially. So, if you don't mind, Marinella, I'm going to start off by asking you some questions that we do see quite frequently when it comes to uh, business plans pertaining again to U.S. immigration.
Definitely, Fadi. I'm ready.
Okay, so one of the first things that are asked by clients is, what exactly is involved with the business plan? What does it entail? What does it need to have? So, what are the key components that are needed for business plans to be successful with the application for whatever U.S. visa is being applied for?
Definitely, Fadi. So yes, there is a structure that is very similar to a business plan for immigration or a business plan for any other purposes. So I'm going to go through the sections that we usually include in our business plans, and then later I can also show some samples of what we do. So usually a business plan entails an executive summary. It has the description of the applicant, their background. We also are very thorough on the description of the business itself, which is very important for the officer. We go into industry and market analysis. We talk about competition. We include a section about sales and marketing strategy. We also have a personnel plan and financials. We're usually including 5-year projections. So that's overall what a business plan entails. Of course, depending on the visa type, there are going to be different types of sections that we include to make sure that everything that immigration wants to see is embedded there. So, for example, the E2 business plan is one type of business plan that has a certain structure. And
Mhm.
then other visas, such as the L1 or EB5, that we can maybe discuss a little bit further along, have other sections as well.
Right. Okay. No, that makes sense. Thank you for that. When you're working on, or when your team is working on the business plan, how do you keep it in line with what the attorney would like to see?
Great question. And we get asked that a lot on our end when we're talking to our clients. So basically, the communication throughout the process with the immigration lawyer is crucial. So the fact that, for example, we have a good relationship with Visa Place and with you, Fadi, is extremely important because on our end, we are not legal practitioners. So
Right.
we stay very neutral. So once we gather all the information, the immigration lawyer is going to be present in all communications to make sure that once we deliver the first draft, we get the feedback not only on the client side but also on the legal side through the immigration lawyer.
Mhm.
And as you know, Fadi, each immigration lawyer has their own immigration strategy for that particular case. So our intention is that that business plan reflects that immigration strategy through the feedback that we get.
Right. Okay. Very good. Um, I know each case is probably a little bit different, but how comfortable are you, or are you, to discuss what type of fees a client may anticipate when it comes to business plans?
Of course, Patty. So actually, we are very transparent. Our fees are in our website, and we always use flat fees. It doesn't matter what the industry is, what the business is, but they do vary by visa type. So the range is between 1650 to 4,000, depending if it's an E2, an L1, or an EB5, for example.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
In terms of the turnaround period to get a plan prepared, what does that look like from your team's end?
So basically, I'm gonna like take you through the usual process. We start off with a questionnaire. The client completes it. Our team reviews it. We clarify any questions and additional information we may need before getting started, and then we start the writing process, which usually takes between 7 and 10 business days to provide a first draft, which is almost a finished document, and then we provide unlimited revisions, so that both the lawyer and the applicant can make as many changes as they want until they feel comfortable with the final draft. Then we'll design it, and then that's going to be part of the application.
Okay, that's pretty. That's a pretty quick turnaround. How are you able to complete it that quickly?
Yes, and we really pride ourselves in that, and we actually have even a rush service for that we do in 5 business days, and a super rush service that we do in 3 business days.
Hmm.
And the reason that we're able to do that is because we currently have more than 150 employees, and 60 of those are writers. So what we do is that we have project managers. They each have a team of 5 writers. So the project manager is going to be the one who is communicating permanently with the client. So I would say that because of the size of our team, we're able to streamline the process of developing business plans for immigration.
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
I know when we are speaking to clients, we have clients that are in a wide array of different industries. Could be, it could be food and beverage, it could be consulting, it could be, hospitality. I mean, there's just all kinds of retail. Um, what sources do you use to make the proper sort of market analyses that are required for these business plans?
So it does vary between industry, of course. It depends on the business. It depends on the business model itself. But usually we're using IBIS World and Statista. Those are our main sources. And then depending, like I said, on the industry, we'll go into specific sources to make sure all the information is there for the industry and the market analysis.
Right, and that's all up to date, of course.
Correct. So we make sure that we have up-to-date information, which is sometimes one of the most challenging parts when people are maybe wondering of doing the business plan themselves, because then they need to get this information that's up to date, and sometimes they need to purchase it from different sources, and then it ends up being even more expensive than just having the business plan done by an experienced third party.
Right. Okay. All right. Very good. In terms of the essential elements that would make up a business plan from one visa to the next, can you describe? Are there any differences looking at like an L1, which is an intercompany transfer, type
Mhm.
of visa or application, versus an E2, which is investor based?
Definitely. So, as I was saying before, the structure of an E2 business plan is very similar to a structure of a regular business plan. Of course, it does have specific sections that make sure that it has all the components that immigration wants to see, such as the jobs that are being created, the investment that is being done, the description of the business, the projections throughout the 5 years. So, all of those are components that most of our business plans are going to have. When we talk about the L1 business plan, it's a very different type of visa. So here, there are some elements that are crucial. So describing the relationship between the parent company and the company in the U.S.
Right.
That's one of the fundamentals of it. Describing the parent company and how the parent company will support the U.S. company during their growth.
Hmm.
That's also crucial. Argumenting that the applicant is an executive abroad and that they will keep being an executive in the US. So the way that we usually do that is We're including organizational charts. We're also including the org chart not only for year one, but also what is projected for year five. We are very detailed about the role, the duties, and even we go deep into details of time allocation of their responsibilities to make sure that we are saying that this person is an executive and we're highlighting the importance of them coming to the US in that role.
Right. Okay. Um, you also mentioned that you deal with EB-5 visa
Yes,
business plans, and
correct.
how would that differ from what you just discussed?
So the EB5 is one of our most comprehensive business plans, and they need to be matter of whole compliant. So what does that mean? It needs to be a very detailed and credible business plan where we demonstrate the job creation and the potential of the new commercial enterprise. So there's a lot of detail that goes into an EB5 business plan. It's a very thorough document. We need to convince the USCIS that there is real potential of this business to create the jobs. They ask for an executive summary as well, usually the same structure, but going a lot deeper than in our other visa type business plans. Here, you need to show the source of funds. So, where are those funds coming from? Like I was saying, that the business is likely to generate the employment necessary. And we include a SWOT analysis and we include very detailed financials as well. And of course, it needs to be consistent with the information that is going to be provided in the other parts of the application of the I-526.
Right. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Very good. I know I touched on this earlier, but when it comes to doing these business plans, are there specific industries that you would say your company is sort of excels at more than others, or are they all equal across the board?
So we're very industry agnostic, and as you know, Fadi, for the E2, there's like many sorts of different businesses that apply for an E2.
Definitely.
So there's nothing like in particular that we would say that we specialize in. We can do any business plan for any industry, any business model, and we've seen like, I mean, if I could tell you all the business types that we've seen, we've even done a cafe that was focused on cats. We've
Right.
done wholesaling of anything that you can imagine. We do a lot of real estate. We do restaurants. We do consulting companies, real estate. So there's a lot of different industries. So in our case, it doesn't really vary. As I mentioned before, we've touched upon around more than 120 different industries, and the fact that we have different teams within our company. We have different project managers and different writers who have also been specializing in different industries and also visa types. So that's how we choose what team should take care of which project. But we're ready for any type of industry.
Okay. Very good.
Mm.
In terms of and I know you're a director with Journey, but having sort of some insight on other, there's many business plan writing service providers out there. What separates Journey from the others?
So I would say the three main things that we pride ourselves in is going to be responsiveness. I think nobody's faster than us in replying to any email, any request, any question. Customer service. We're going to make sure that everybody who works with us is satisfied. And not only because we want ultimately that client gets approved, but also we want our partners like Visa Place to be happy with our services as well. And then, of course, our expertise. So we've been doing this for 10 years. And only in 2022, we prepared more than 6,000 business plans. That's a huge amount of business plans. So anything that happens today in the industry, we are going to know very fast. So the fact that we learn fast because of our volume, because of our expertise, I would say that's also one of our main competitive advantages.
Okay, very good. Are there any other services that are provided through Journey besides business plans?
So business plans, I would say that's our main core service. But we actually also do market research, and we also prepare business plans for different purposes, for investors, for loans. We do pitch decks, we do financial models. So we do that within our services as well. We even have a digital division where we do content creation and we do websites, and that comes also. All of these services have come out of the experience of our clients working with us and then saying, hey, can you help me with this, can you help me with that? So then that's how we've grown with different services aside from the business plans.
All right, very good. Okay, I think that wraps up the questions from my end, Marianella. Thank you for answering those for the purpose of myself and for other viewers. Um, Now I'll pass
Certainly.
the floor to you.
Perfect, Fadi. So no, I'm glad to ask questions because as I was saying, there are a lot of clients that come to us and sometimes they have many different questions and not all of them we can reply because I was saying before we stay neutral on the legal side. Um, so I'm happy to have some questions of the ones that we've been saving for you as well.
Yeah, of course.
Great. So let's start with the first one. What's the importance of a business plan within an immigration application?
Yeah, it's a question that comes up quite frequently. We as a law firm, we do a lot of E2 visa applications. We do L1s, particularly L1 startups as well. We do E1s. So, keeping in mind that many of these businesses are, for all intents and purposes, startups in the U.S., it is important to be able to demonstrate to the adjudicator, the person that's looking at the application, what is what are the plans for this company, and it have to be comprehensive plans, right? To For someone, for example, to invest a sizable amount, for example, into an E2 business, and it's particularly if it's a startup or even if it's not a startup, the adjudicator is going to need to make a decision on that application, and part of the decision making process would be to see how viable this business is, right? So when it comes to an E2, as an example, one of the requirements when it comes to E2s is to show that the business is not marginal. Well, if it's a startup, right, and really the adjudicator has really nothing to go off of, the business plan would play at that point a very pinnacle role to show that it is a realistic, outcome or an ambition that the person has with respect to setting up that business in the U.S. Same thing with the L1s, right? We do a lot of L1 startups. With the L1 startup, it is crucial to, of course, have a business plan as well, because although the individual may have had a business, in a different country, whether it's Canada or somewhere else, they're now showing that they are wanting to expand that business into the U.S. And as part of that expansion, they need to demonstrate again why that business will be viable. When it comes to an L1 startup, applicants are only issued a status or visa for 1 year. So that's not a long runway. So hopefully the plan is both realistic and it is achievable. I've sometimes seen from and we end up going back from not from your firm, but through other companies. Sometimes we see business plans, or they're self-made business plans, where they're too ambitious, right? And that can also go against the grain of from what the officer is looking at and saying, how are you going to get from zero to to this level and have all these employees and so over, all within a 1 year period. So everything has to be not just realistic but achievable as well.
Definitely, Fadi, and with the L1 and also like all of the business plans that we do, when we receive financial projections from our clients, or we're building them for them, we take into account that it is in line to the growth of that particular industry, right?
Right.
So if we see anything that's too realistic, we're going to say, okay, this is way beyond the growth of the industry standards. You should consider this, and then make sure that it's a conservative approach, but
Mhm.
also enough for immigration purposes. So those are the types of communications that we usually have with you as the immigration lawyer, to make sure that everything that is in the business plan is in line to again what USCIS is expecting.
Right.
Mhm. Perfect. So let's see. Another one of the questions that I get asked a lot. Is the business plan needed only for businesses that are starting from scratch, or also when you purchase a franchise or an existing business?
Right. So when there is even when there's a franchise or an existing business, it's always a good idea to also have a business plan because let's just look at an existing business, for example. Maybe the business was running well, maybe it can be running, better, right? More streamlined. To include a business plan with an existing business or a franchise is certainly recommended. That's what we would recommend to our clients. And I know that sometimes franchises themselves they provide sort of a framework for a business plan, which I recall this happening with one of our clients, and um, I think our client ended up contacting your company, and they made some modifications to that business plan. So I think that's something else that you do as well, right? Like if a client starts off on their own doing something on their end, and they want a professional set of eyes to go through it and kind of tweak it and make it as comprehensive as possible for the application. That is something that I know that your team has done as well. Um, but when it comes to any sort of a startup, again, whether it's a franchise or even an existing business, although there may be some other requirements from a visa requirements perspective, we still
Hmm.
would recommend a business plan. And just on a side note, sometimes we see, we have corporate clients that are, applying for an L1. And with that L1, they are maybe the company in the US already existed. In those cases, it may not be absolutely required. Like if there's already a strong presence in the US in order to get a business plan,
Hmm.
but it is to be determined really on a case by case basis.
Correct, Fatty. Yes, and usually we're doing more of the L1A, so L1 startups, because of what you're saying. The other ones, I mean, maybe a financial statement of a big company will suffice. So, of course, that's up to the immigration lawyer to decide. And also going back to what you were saying about the franchise, it's very interesting because some clients come to us and say, "Hey, but the franchise gave me this template. I should be able to use it for the same
Right.
purpose." And our answer is always the same. When you're writing a business plan, the most important thing is who you're talking to, right? So
Mhm.
it's not going to be the same if you're talking to an immigration officer than if you're talking to a bank or if you're talking to an investor,
Right.
and of course if you're talking to a franchise. So it's important to understand that we specialize and we understand what is expected on the immigration side of things,
Right.
such as what we were mentioning before, highlighting job creation, highlighting the executive role if it's an L1, highlighting the investment. So, a lot of different components that go into a business plan that is tailored for immigration purposes is the way that we explain that it's not the same having maybe a franchise business plan. And also about the service that you were mentioning, we do have a diagnosis service. So if somebody has a draft that they've built, we're happy to do a diagnosis for them and analyze what's missing and what is maybe partially there or what should be adjusted in order for it to be suitable for immigration purposes. And the fact that we've built this product is also because a lot of our partners are immigration partners. We're saying, hey, I'm spending too much time on business plans that people draft that are done by themselves because of course, like I was saying before, they're speaking to a different audience when they've created that business plan. So
Right.
when talking to immigration, you need to consider other aspects as well.
Right.
Mhm.
Okay. Very
Good.
good.
Okay, so another question we get asked, at what point is it necessary to start the business plan during the process?
Yeah. Usually when we have clients that come to us and again, of course, depending on the nature of the actual visa that's being applied for, it is usually in our very first list of documents that are provided to our clients because we do know that sometimes these business plans, it is going to take some thought. It's maybe some time to put together. Of course, if they get in contact with your team, I think it's a pretty quick turnaround. But we do look at the business plan as being pinnacle in many of these applications, and yes, we would ask for it right at the very outset.
Okay, wonderful. And that's good for us because then we come in and make sure that you have it for everything that you need to do in the application, of course.
Right.
Okay, I had some of the questions that you've already answered, so I'll skip through. This is something that I get asked about a lot. People want to invest in real estate, and
Right.
they are always wondering if that is enough to be able to apply for an E2 visa.
Right.
So how and in what cases does it apply? And can you explain a little bit further about that, Patty?
Of course. So looking at the E2 requirements, what does it really require? So it requires number one, a substantial investment. Number two, the investment has to be at risk. And the third, very important requirement is that the business itself is not marginal. So we get asked the same question, many times over. It's been going on for years and years. You have, for example, a couple that maybe they bought a vacation property in the U.S. And then they think it's a good idea. Hey, maybe we can turn this into getting an E2 out of it. I mean, since we spent all this money on this property. But the reality is, if it's a single, you know, single residence, where maybe it's being rented out through Airbnb or some other channel, that's probably not going to be enough based on that alone to qualify for an E2. But if we look at maybe having, maybe the person has multiple properties, maybe they're buying an entire complex somewhere, where there is a real need to hire an individual or individuals. That's really what it comes down to. So if you have let's just say a commercial, or a vacation property, and you said, okay, well, do I really need to hire anybody, like put somebody on payroll to run my operations, or keep the place maintained, or whatever it may be? And if the answer is no, then looking at that looking at that investment alone, it may lead you to the actual the decision that no, it's probably not going to require an E2. It won't be successful from an E2 perspective. But if I have, for example, let's just say I had a number of properties, and I know I need to probably hire somebody to maybe take care of those properties, and then I transitions that to maybe something, I'm doing this for my properties, maybe I'll do it for other properties in the area. I'll do some like a property management business. Then that could work. So I would really advise those that are thinking about doing this type of of a E2 application to get in contact with us, and maybe we can run through some scenarios and see whether it can work to their advantage.
Thank you, Fadi. And yes, this is definitely something that people ask us a lot in our like conversations. In our case, I mean, we've done many business plans in real estate, but as you say, they're usually business models that are not passive. Rather, they are active. And as long as it's shown as a business and not just an individual investment, that's what we're seeing also in a lot of our business plans. And of course, with the support of partners like you and Visa Place.
Right.
Another type of business that we see that has some questions is consulting companies.
Mhm.
So how people usually ask, how can I have a big initial investment if I don't need it that much? I mean, how can I put that in the business plan if I don't need to spend a lot of money to establish a business like this?
Right. Yeah. So it's really being caught, between a rock and a hard place when it comes to consulting companies, right? And on one end of the spectrum, you understand that you can probably get away with your laptop and registration of a company, and there's not really all that much that needs to be done in order to get set up as a consulting company, depending on the depending on the size of this company as well. But then understanding, especially if it's like an E2 visa that's being applied for, is that it does require a substantial amount. So we normally look at on our end. This is across the board. I know there's a lot of different information out there, but generally speaking, the investment has to be proportional to the nature of the business. So if it's something like a consulting business, then I would say, well, can you show roughly about a $50,000 investment, right? Is there
Okay.
enough to, can you warrant that? So, what kind of expenses can be shown? Well, you need to, um, register the business itself. You want to maybe hire the attorneys to get you the actual visa. Maybe you're hiring
Mm,
attorney to help to register the business and figure out what's the best corporate structure for the company. Maybe you're going to get a professional business plan done. Do you need commercial space? Do you not need commercial space? Can you put together a marketing plan that is showing, a very robust initial marketing, so you can make a splash, when going into the U.S. And so, if you can kind of, if you can put, if you can show that these little investments here and there, it is sizable, then it's certainly worth considering, applying for an E2. Sometimes, when clients come to us, it is a very little, expected investment right off the cuff. But then
mhm.
when we talk to them and explain and say, okay, well, you need to do this, you need to do that, little things start adding up, right?
Correct.
Even if like a consulting business, are they going to be going to see clients? Do they need a vehicle, right? Things like that. It can
Correct.
all become part of the investment if it can be, you know, um, really like tied in with the business itself. It's not just saying, hey, you know what, I need to buy a vacation property in Miami just because. Yeah, right. But there are other ways to do that.
Definitely. No, we see that as well. Maybe they need a software, maybe they need a website. So yeah,
Exactly.
like you say, Fatty, it starts adding up, and it's basically understanding what they are going to spend in the next year or so, and then
Right.
having that be paid up front. And we were discussing it the other day with the team that some people don't like it because they're forced to have this initial investment, but that at the end it also helps the business itself, because then you're you're not thinking about the revenue that you're going to need tomorrow to do your activities, but rather you have already invested that, and then you can slowly like start doing things step by step so that you can start growing.
Exactly. Yeah.
Exactly.
And on that note as well, just it's I know it's when it comes to E2s, it's important to understand that the investment itself, it does need to be a real investment, right? So many times our clients come to us and say, yeah, I can transfer, 50,000, 100,000, I can transfer it to a US account. That's not going to be enough, right? It's really showing, here's invoices, here's payments made. There are also other ways to maybe getting around that, using the services an escrow agent, um,
Mhm.
and having still contracts in place and showing that the only condition is, whether the E2 is approved, and then the money gets transferred and the invoice is paid. That's technically okay. That's even in the regulations. But
Interesting.
but keeping in mind again that, it's not just like a transfer of funds, from one account to the next. Because keeping that in mind, if I'm an investor and I said, okay, you know what, I can invest $100,000 into this business. I'm going to transfer it to a U.S. account. That's also controlled by myself. How is that then at risk, right? Because I can go in and, I can say, you know what, no, I need this money back. I'm going to transfer it back to me. So it's not truly at risk funds in that sense. But there are, again, different ways to pivot and to try to make this as successful as possible.
Thank you, Fadi. I'm learning as we go as well.
Okay, very
The
good.
part about the escrow, that's very interesting, and I'm glad you brought it up, because I mean that's also people always ask or are concerned about the fact that it needs to be at risk. A lot of people say like, yes, but it's there, but what if I don't get approved, right? What's
Right.
going to happen after? So there's a lot of that as well. What kinds of businesses, Fadi, are eligible for an E2 or an L1? All of them, or are there any specifics that you would like to mention?
Honestly, over the years, and our firm has been around for now over 25 years. I've been doing this myself for over 16 years. And we've seen a wide array, the full gamut of any and different types of businesses that are out there. Um, so realistically, it can be for any business type. Um, but if the business type is one that is it's not conducive to allowing for the company to hire people, then that's probably not the type of business that the U.S. is looking for, right? And I can remember, just because we were just talking about a consulting businesses. I remember I had a client that had a consulting business. In this case, it was in Canada for over 30 years, and has always was always a solo rider, doing everything on their own. And then they wanted to basically replicate the same thing in the U.S. And just they weren't accustomed to hiring anyone, and they didn't want to hire anybody. And we had to tell them that's not likely to be successful, because really, what is going to be the main benefit that the U.S. can look to if you're saying that here's my 5-year business plan, and I'm going to have one employee, which is me, across all 5 years, and nobody else, right? So
Correct.
um, yeah, so those types of businesses really have to be thought out. And we got to question whether it's even appropriate to move forward with it. But usually that's not the case. Everyone wants to move their business to the U.S. because, hey, it's the land of opportunity. And there's a greater chance of really exponential growth in the U.S., right? And sometimes that growth happens organically, right? It's they get something up, they get something set up, and they think it's only going to generate X, and then it ends up generating X times 2 or 3 or whatever it may be.
Definitely. And on that note, Fadi, that you're mentioning about the exponential growth that the U.S. market has, what are your thoughts on these recession conversations happening lately about the economy, and should people be worried about this before applying? What are your thoughts about
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm not an economist myself, but understanding, the different market conditions, I'm seeing that some of our clients are really are finding businesses that are for sale at a really great value. Um, and we've had other businesses, because that discussion, by the way, of the R word, as I call it, it's also transcended other borders. Um,
it?
so, for example, if I have a Canadian that's feeling, that their business is not doing very well in Canada, um, keeping in mind, going from Canada to the U.S., you're going 10 times the population again, more growth opportunity. So, although the condition of the market, could play a role from an individual's perspective as to questioning whether it's the right move or not. I've seen many, over the last few months, many applications that have gone through, and I've had clients that have reached out to us that are doing renewals because they've got their visas 5 years ago or whatever it may be, and they're doing surprisingly, I mean, they're doing really well, right? They're doing really well, and looking to either again extend their visas, or looking for other channels to try and get maybe permanent residency while in the U.S. Right? So I haven't I can say that I haven't on my end, haven't seen how that has really negatively affected issuances of the E2s. In fact, I would take it from the opposite standpoint. If I may, it's probably the optimal time to apply when you think about it, because
Mhm.
with this R word, being floated around, from an officer's perspective, yeah, we need businesses to come in. We need businesses to come in and hire people, and generate, revenue, and you're going to be paying taxes and so forth. So it is a great time to actually be applying for it.
Mhm. Definitely, Fadi, and we agree with that. I mean, we feel that even though there's a lot of conversations about recession, the U.S. economy is still very strong. The markets, every industry, the population, the needs that are in the market are always pretty strong, and we don't see that in other countries as well. And some people like coming from other countries because the situation is not ideal where they live. That's also one of the reasons why people move. So we see a lot of that, and I mean we encourage that they apply, of course.
Right.
Um, so Fadi, I've asked a lot of questions. So I
Yes.
think some people that are here also have a few of their own.
Yeah. So let's go through some of those questions. All
Yeah.
right. Let me look at one here. Is it possible for a Canadian citizen to travel to the U.S. for personal tourism and bring their foreign work with them to work remotely? Example, working for a Canadian company and working from your laptop within the U.S. Good question. We see that quite often, and I would say that it's really a gray area. Um, there's not any there's not any sort of pointed regulations that you can point to say whether it's definitely illegal or definitely legal. But for a question like this, I would highly advise to maybe get in contact with us and speak to myself or one of my colleagues, so we can go over this in a little bit more detail. And you never know, maybe there is an avenue for this individual to actually get an actual visa. Um, for example, maybe they're working for a Canadian company that's doing, you know, um, a lot of business in the U.S. So that may open up the sort of the landscape to be maybe being applying for something called an E1. But again, it's probably best to get in contact with us, and we'll address that a little bit further, specifically to your situation. All right. I'm interested in opening a home-based business out of my home in the U.S. I am a Canadian and a dog groomer. What are the chances? I'm always asked to groom dogs in my area where we currently winter.
I get that a lot.
Mhm.
Like, do I need to have a physical office or not? So that's great that that was asked.
Yeah. So I'll say generally the E2, there's no hard set requirement to have an actual commercial address, unlike the requirements with an L1, which is a little bit archaic, I would say. But with the E2, if the business is not does not necessarily require a commercial address, then then it doesn't necessarily need it to in order to be approved. Um, I'll put it in a different way. If I had, for example, if I was setting up as a Canadian, I'm setting up, I don't know, a food truck in the U.S., right? And I have this brilliant idea of selling, Canadian, maybe like a Canadian food, like poutine, right, or something. I want to bring it to us
That
a
would be nice.
whole area in the U.S. Then what's really the point of going out and actually renting a commercial office just so we can have this food truck or food trucks driving around and selling the food there. So it's going to really depend on the nature of the business, I would say. But yeah, dog grooming business, we've actually seen that exact same business and other related businesses before operating out of out of their home, and it's been successful.
Mm. And we've seen a lot of also a lot of projects where co-working spaces. Is that something that you would recommend, Fadi?
Again, it really depends on the nature of the business, right?
Mhm.
So if I have a business and I have it's the business that is usually conducive to people coming in the office and working and so forth, then having a work shared space, it may take away from the application itself, or maybe that's a good starting point, and there's plans to actually get into a different type of space in the future, and that can work out for the individual or for the investor, right? When it comes to an L1, however, I'll just step back to when it comes to L1, I'd be very careful because with the L1 again being a little bit, I would have hoped that post COVID, there
Mhm.
would have been a little bit of changes made with respect to what's actually required, but
Mhm.
the L1 still requires a commercial space, both in the foreign country and in the US as well. Um, so share some sort of a sharing arrangement. Be very, I'd be careful with that. Sometimes it's even better to find a space that is a sort of a private space for the individual, for the company,
Mhm.
and then again look at growing it from there if needed.
Perfect.
Okay. Can the applicant already be in the U.S. as this is being drafted? I would assume that they're asking about the business plan being drafted as well as the application being drafted.
Well, if it's the business plan, we work with many clients that are not in the US, so they can be anywhere. And some of them are already in the US or are under a different visa. So in our case, what has to do with the business plan, it's completely irrelevant where they are at the moment that we get started with the process.
Right. Yeah, I agree. But also, when it comes to E2s and L1s, there is the opportunity for the individual to apply for a change of status while they're in the US.
Correct.
So there's some key things to discuss. I'll discuss them briefly, but um, so the application can be completed while the person's in the U.S., sent off to the USCIS, be adjudicated, and then so they can change their status, for example, from a visitor status to like an E2 status or an L1 status, whether it's an L1A or L1B. But on that note, um, one thing to keep in mind is especially when it comes to the E2, if somebody applies for an E2 status while in the US, that status is only valid while the person is in the US. Okay, so although let's look at, we deal with a lot of Canadians, so I'll talk about that. A Canadian, for example, would apply for an E2 visa through the consulate. The visa would be valid for 5 years once it's granted. Whereas the E2 status while in the US, it's only valid for 2 years. And on top of
Mhm.
it, if they end up, if it's granted and the person ends up leaving the U.S., well, they're gonna need the visa to get back in. So they can't rely on, well, my E2 status is good for 2 years, so I can get back in.
Mhm.
The jurisdiction for the E2s, it really it lies with the consulate. So many times, if a person is applying for the E2 while in the U.S., we highly recommend to apply for the visa itself. It can be done at the same time, so
Mhm.
that they don't run into an issue of having to leave the U.S. and then finding out that they're stuck and they can't get back in.
And do you do more through consulates, Fatty, usually?
Definitely, yes.
Okay. Okay. And the current status of the consulate in Toronto, how is that looking right now after COVID and all that?
Yeah, I mean it's been really moving along. I would say we've seen in the worst of times, there were wait times. We were seeing wait times of about 8 to 10 months, sometimes even longer. Now, you can likely find an appointment within. Um, if I looked at it the other day, it was I saw an appointment available in April, for example. But
Wow, that's
it's not
really
it's not just a matter of applying or doing the DS-160 and setting up the appointment. There's obviously a process behind it, including having the application be sent off to the consulate for them to review it. Then they would come back, and if all is well, they would say, "Okay, go ahead. You can book the appointment or have your client book the appointment." Um, so overall, from start to finish, the actual processing times has come down quite substantially since the last 2 years ago or so.
hmm.
Yeah.
No, and now that you mentioned that of course we know your clients are usually coming from Canada. There has been, I mean, a lot of business plan requests on the immigration side for Canada. For us, it's one of the countries where we have the most requests, especially for E2s.
Right.
So I don't know, people are enjoying the US from
Yeah.
Canada. Maybe the weather
Yeah,
coming down to Florida.
right.
A lot of that happening.
Definitely. All right. Let me see the question.
This is one that I had as well because we get this a lot. We get a very wide range of investment amounts that depend, of course, in depending on the business, depending
Right.
on the type of business. So we always get asked, what is a good amount of investment? How much should they invest?
Right. And it does really depend on the nature of the business, right? So I know we
Right.
talked before about a consulting company, and a consulting company would probably need, comparably like a lot less of an investment than say somebody that's setting up, use a car dealership in the U.S., right?
Correct.
Um, so if we look at, let's just say $50,000 that the person's going to be investing into a consulting business, I would say that's pretty fair. It's probably reasonable from a from an adjudicator's perspective. I think showing that that the person's making that much of an investment, I think it is substantial based on the nature of the business itself. But again, if you're setting up to go back to my example, a car dealership, well, how far is $50,000 really going to get an individual setting up a car dealership? Probably not,
Correct.
not far.
Hmm.
So it does really depend on the nature of the business. The way I like to look at it is, you know, so what's it going to take for the individual to get to day one of operations? How much does that person really need to spend based on the business itself, right? And if it seems like, if it seems too low, well, again, maybe the E2 is not the right option, or maybe speaking to a professional and seeing how that can be improved would be the way to go. And the generally, like, the higher the investment, of course, the better it is from an E2 perspective, right? So
Definitely.
not that there's a quota for when it comes to an E2, and that's another good reason to apply for an E2. There's not a cap to the number, but let's just say I'm an adjudicator and I get I have two people that are applying for an E2. They're both setting up a cafe in the U.S., different areas, maybe same areas, whatever it may be. But if one person's saying, "Yeah, I'm going to set up a cafe. It's going to cost me 45,000," and another person saying, "I'm setting up a cafe. It's going to cost me 200,000. I've spent that much." Then one seems like there's a lot, obviously, a better application than the other.
Hmm. And the same goes with the people, like how many people you need to hire, right? It comes back to the same.
Right.
It depends.
It depends on the type of business it is, and there's not unlike the EB5, where the investor needs to show that yes, we're going to hire 10 full-time employees, within 2 years of being active and so forth. There's not a minimum number of employees that are needed for the L1 or the E2, right?
Exactly. Correct.
All right, just looking at the time here. I know we're going to be wrapping up soon, but can I invest in real estate and apply for an E2? So we touched on this. How do you make
Mhm.
sure that it is included in the business plan? I don't know if you have anything else to add about this, Marianella.
So what we've seen with the business plans that we usually do with real estate, like you were saying, Fadi, is that they're usually mentioning a business model that is not, like you said, like buying a property and then renting it on Airbnb. We have never, I mean, I think we haven't done that for any business plan. So usually what they're trying to show is that what you were saying, usually we see business plans where they have either property management or
Right.
another company that could be remodeling alongside flipping, buying, selling, but they always have an additional business model that is usually more active on the real estate side.
Hmm.
So that's what we've seen on the real estate, which is very in line to everything that we've worked with you and your clients as well.
Right. No,
Mhm.
that's well put. I totally agree with that statement. Okay, if I go for an E2 with a U.S. citizen partner, if I keep 51%, can my U.S. citizen partner get a loan for the business? Um, yeah, so I mean, with respect to getting a loan, the only sort of immigration related part of it that I can add to this is if there is a loan that is, it's backed up by the business, then that's not going to be considered as, as an investment, right? Now, if there's a loan that is with some personal security, whether it could be like a home equity line of credit, it could be a personal line of credit, all of that can be attributed towards the investment for an E2, right? But as for, can my U.S. partner get a loan for the business? My understanding is that they can, but that's not the area that that I deal with. It's not my area of expertise in terms of financing for a business.
Great, Fadi. I wanted to finalize by showing a sample of an E2
Yeah, that's
and
a good
also
idea.
asking you, Fadi, and this is more for me.
Yeah.
What do you like and why do you like working with Journey? And then you can tell us, and I'll be sharing screen while I.
Okay, definitely. Yeah, if you go ahead and share the screen. But I mean, generally, I know that your company has been very reliable. We do provide usually to our clients, different service providers, like when they come to us for recommendations. And whenever they do move forward with your firm, it's usually a very seamless process. I'm speaking on behalf of myself and our U.S. team that deals with your team members all the time. And I do see a lot of back and forth with respect to changes being made to business plans, understanding that business plans can be they get updated as needed, and there's unlimited number of revisions. So that makes it really you know really key when it comes to working with a service provider like yours.
Thank you, Fadi. And on our end, I mean, it means a lot. It means a lot that our partners like to work with us. We also want to speed things up for the application to take place because I know there's a lot of usually back and forth when you get maybe business plans that are done by the applicant or by other companies. So we want to make sure that within all the things that they need to do while preparing for that application that we
Mhm.
make it as easy as possible as we can. So that's where we come in, and of course it's also a pleasure to work with partners like you that are very knowledgeable in immigration. You've done so many cases in the past, so just to get that feedback where the immigration strategy is in line with that business plan that we're developing, we're always happy to work with Visa Plus.
All right, very good. Did you want to share a sample?
Ah, you didn't see the. I was sharing the screen while you were talking, but I'm not sure it showed
The
up.
entire thing? Oh, I
Yes.
saw it. I saw on my end it was shared a moment. Anyhow, okay, that's fine. I do see. I think we'll deal with one more question and then we can wrap up here. So, what if the business and you apply for evolves into something more? For example, dog grooming, and then adding boarding. Do you need to apply for a new E2 visa? So long as it's in line, I would say, with the initial business and business plan, then if you're adding services to the business, I don't necessarily see the need to apply for a new visa. But I would specifically I would encourage this person that's asking the question, maybe reach out to us. I can speak to you directly and let you know, and I'll be no. You can just let everyone know that we are, for anyone that's on this call, there are some. We're doing discounted consultation or bookings for anyone interested in applying for an E2. And for this person that's asking this question, reach out to me directly, and I'll waive the actual consultation fee or booking fee for you.
Amazing. And that's very good because it's usually an expensive part of the process. So, so that's a really nice gift.
Yeah, not a problem. Yeah, so thank you again, Marinella, for joining. It was a pleasure. It was the first of our live events that I've personally done with you, and I truly appreciate your level of expertise. And I think it's helpful for all those that tuned in to join us today.
Thank you so much, Patty, for having us, and it's our pleasure. Thank you
Okay,
so much.
very good. Thank you.
Bye.